Hi, I'm Chris Best, translator of Winterberg's Last Journey by Jaroslav Rudiš. This is one of my all-time favorite books in the German language by one of my all-time favorite authors, and I am super excited to be able to bring it to the English market. So I am just going to read for you my introduction to the text. Jaroslav Rudiš and I first met in the train. We'd originally planned to meet in Berlin, the city both of us call home, but the man is so often on the road, or more accurately on the rails, that the train became the most convenient place for us to speak. It turned out to be a serendipitous choice. Like the titular Winterberg, Rudiš is most at home on the railway. Along with Central Europe and the tangled, often tragic history of the European continent, it comprises one of the most consistent themes in his writing, from his earliest works to the present day. Unlike Winterberg, however, Rudiš prefers to let others do the rambling, and he listens. Many of the digressions and anecdotes that add to the extraordinary depth and humor of the world in Winterberg's Last Journey began as conversations on the train. From that first train journey together, it became clear to me that Rudiš simply attracts stories in the same way that others might attract fame or misfortune. Complete strangers of all backgrounds feel almost unnaturally compelled to open up in his presence, as if they can sense, correctly, that this man will value their stories, file them away, and one day weave them into a larger work of art. I'm not immune to this aura myself. It almost feels harder not to tell your stories to Jaroslav Rudiš. He absorbs it all in earnest, like a priest taking confession. Despite being so often on the rails, Rudiš's writing is deeply rooted in a sense of homeland, which for him comprises the entirety of Central Europe. Born in 1972, he grew up in communist Czechoslovakia, coming of age just as the Iron Curtain fell. His hometown of Lomnice nad Popelkou in northern Bohemia was part of the infamous Sudetenland, a region with a mixed German-Czech population before World War II, which belonged to Austria-Hungary before World War I. Much of his literary work can be understood to exist at these cultural crossroads, focusing on elements that bind Central Europe beyond its linguistic differences. The railway above all, the beer, the pubs, the food, the complex interactions of history, borders, and identity. Like Jaroslav Rudiš himself, his works are Central European at their core. The interaction of German and Czech culture that defines the history of his home region has been a prominent theme in Rudiš's writing since the publication of his first Czech-language novel, The Sky Under Berlin, in 2002. The following years saw the development of one of his best-known works in partnership with illustrator Jaromír 99, the graphic novel series Alois Nebel, later adapted into an award-winning animated film. Out of his 6 Czech-language novels, 2 more, Grand Hotel and National Street, would also receive film adaptations in his home country. Rudiš has also written numerous original stage and radio plays, as well as 3 bilingual rock albums with his Kafka band, further solidifying his reputation as one of the most prominent and versatile figures in the Czech cultural scene over the last 20 years. Winterberg's Last Journey, published in 2019, is Rudiš's first novel to be originally written in the German language, representing both a break-in and continuity with his previous body of work. Linguistically, it marks a clear turn in his oeuvre, as Rudiš would go on to write 4 more books and a graphic novel in his adopted language. Thematically, however, it continues where his Czech language books left off, featuring many of the same elements that characterize his earlier work: the railway, the intersection of cultures, the blend of tragedy and comedy. But it probes even deeper into the darker themes that have always been present in his work as well, like the interaction of history with the present and the legacy of war, expulsion, and dictatorship. This is not a coincidence. In discussing his work, Rudiš states that writing in German gives him distance and perspective to engage with subject matter that feels too raw in his native language. Winterberg, he claims, is a book that he could have only written in German, that if he had tried to write it in his native Czech, it would have turned into a different book entirely. In portraying the character of Winterberg, a 99-year-old Sudetenland German with a brain addled by age and history, Rudiš relies heavily on rambling and repetition that often takes on a near melodic quality. A number of themes and phrases appear over and over again: laying railway tracks across the Alps, the various sorts of corpses burned in his father's Feuerhalle, the beautiful landscape of battlefields, cemeteries, and ruins, the Battle of Königgrätz. There are moments when Winterberg's rambling pushes our patience. The reader is subjected to this onslaught of history in the same way that our narrator, Kraus, is subjected to this onslaught of history. We feel what Kraus feels. Winterberg's stories are intriguing, but exhausting. Sometimes they're too much. Sometimes we tune them out. Yet his words creep into our thoughts and take hold there, forcing us to admit, like Kraus, that the elderly Winterberg often has a point. Winterberg's last journey was clearly a labor of love for Rudiš, with an astonishing level of detail to historical and locational detail for those who want to delve deeper into its world. The 1913 Baedeker that they travel with is real, as are all the passages quoted by Winterberg. There really is a Feuerhalle on the Monstransberg in Liberec. It really was the first crematorium in Austria-Hungary, and Wagner's Parsifal really was played at its opening ceremony. The streets and hotels and restaurants and the landmarks that Winterberg remembers from his youth all actually existed in the 1920s and 30s, and many of them still exist today. Winterberg is accurate enough to be a guidebook itself, as I learned while personally following the journey of Winterberg and Kraus across Central Europe during the long process of its translation. Like Rudiš, I was keen to portray the world of Winterberg with all the care and precision it deserved. For me, too, it was a labor of love. Thank you.